brutal kidnap murder that has scarred forever the Greenlease home in Kansas City. A crime that whisked 6-year-old Bobby Greenlease from this school and by taxi to a plain white frame house in St. Joseph, Missouri.
On September 28, 1953, 6-year-old Robert Bobby Cosgrove Greenlease Jr., son of a wealthy entrepreneur, was kidnapped from his school, Notre Dame de Sion in Kansas City, Missouri. Panic and chaos gripped the city as the authorities launched a massive search for the little boy, but the kidnapper remained elusive. Bobby's family soon began receiving a series of ransom letters and phone calls demanding a staggering amount of money for the safe return of their son. As the case gained national attention, the twists and turns became even more shocking. Who was behind the kidnapping? Was it someone close to the family or a stranger? And would Bobby ever be found alive and reunited with his family? Hi, and welcome back to Mysterious Hook, friends. Today we are looking at the disturbing case of Bobby Greenlease. But first, if you still haven't subscribed to our channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button and the bell icon below. So without any further ado, let's dive right into this mystery. Kansas City is located in the western part of the state of Missouri. With a population of more than 500,000 people, it is the largest city in Missouri. One of the city's most iconic landmarks is the Kansas City Power and Light District, which offers an array of restaurants, shops, and entertainment venues. Visitors can also explore the city's vibrant art scene at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art and the Kaufman Center for the Performing Arts. However, amidst all this beauty and excitement, it's hard to forget the shocking crime that once occurred in this very city. Back in the 1950s, in the wealthy Mission Hills neighborhood of Kansas City, a multimillionaire named Robert Greenlease Sr. had everything one could ever ask for. He was a car dealer who owned dealerships across the country. He had made his fortune by introducing General Motors vehicles to the Great Plains in the early 20th century. On February 3, 1947, at the age of 65, his life changed forever with the birth of his son, who he named Robert Bobby Cosgrove Greenlease Jr. Bobby's mother, Virginia Pollock, was Robert's second wife. The Greenlease family lived in luxury and were devoted to their beloved Bobby. He was not an only child, but he had an elder sister named Virginia who was born in 1941. He also had a half-brother named Paul, who was born in 1917. Paul was Robert's son from his first marriage. In 1953, at the age of 6, Bobby was attending the prestigious Notre Dame de Sion, a private Catholic school located at 3823 Locust Avenue in Kansas City. There he learned and grew with his peers. Everything was going fine, and the future looked bright for Bobby. However, fate had other plans for the young boy and his family. The morning of September 28, 1953, was like any other day at Bobby's school, Notre Dame de Sion. However, little did anyone know that this day would soon take a tragic turn. At around 11 a.m., Sister Moran, the nun on duty for the day, opened the school door and she was greeted by a plump woman claiming to be Bobby's aunt. The woman explained that the boy's mother, Virginia, had suffered a heart attack while shopping at the County Club Plaza and had been rushed to St. Mary's Hospital. She went on to say that the Greenlease family had instructed her to take the child to his mother immediately. Without a second thought, Sister Moran went to retrieve Bobby from his classroom. The innocent 6-year-old trusting of adults had no reason to question the woman's identity or intentions. As he took the woman's hand, the nun watched as they both got into a cab and drove off. She assumed that everything was in order. Little did anyone know that the woman was not Bobby's aunt, and the events of that day would change the Greenlease family's lives forever. The phone call that Virginia received less than an hour after Bobby was taken by the unknown woman was one that would forever haunt her. On the other end of the line was Sister Martha Anna, another nun from Bobby's school, who had called the family's home to inquire about Virginia's supposed heart attack. The nun was, however, stunned to know that nothing of the sort had happened. Virginia was not in the hospital, and she had not had a heart attack. It soon dawned on both the nun and Virginia that something sinister was at play here, and it did not take them long to realize that Bobby had been kidnapped. After getting off the phone with Sister Martha, Virginia immediately contacted her husband, Robert, and explained to him everything that had happened. Robert was also as shocked and bewildered as his wife was. Without wasting time, he contacted the Kansas City Police Department to report the crime. The FBI was also called in to assist with the situation. Panic gripped the city as news of Bobby's kidnapping spread. The authorities launched a massive manhunt for the missing boy, but their efforts were hampered by the fact that they had no leads on the woman who had taken him. As the hours ticked by, hope began to fade. But then, on the same day that Bobby had been taken, his parents received the first of several ransom letters. The letter was signed by someone calling themselves M, and it demanded $600,000 for Bobby's safe return. The amount of money was staggering, equivalent to over $6 million in today's currency, but the demands didn't stop there. M also insisted that the ransom money be paid in small denomination notes of 10s and 20s. The authorities were informed of the ransom letter, and they began working tirelessly to track down the mysterious M and secure Bobby's release. The following day, September 29, 1953, brought another ransom letter. This time, the letter came along with a pin that Bobby had been wearing on the day he was kidnapped. Robert, desperate to secure his son's release, decided to go gather the ransom money. And so he reached out to trusted friends and associates for help. One of them was Arthur Eisenhower, the executive vice president at Commerce Trust Company. He was also the brother of the President of the United States at that time. One thing Eisenhower did was to ensure that every bank clerk handling the ransom money made note of the serial numbers on all of the bills. These were later printed in newspapers around the country. The agonizing wait for Bobby's safe return seemed never-ending, as his family continued to gather the exorbitant ransom demanded by the kidnapper. During this time, a man called the Greenlease residence multiple times to reassure Virginia that her son was alive. The kidnapper seemed to enjoy his twisted game, even as the family was plunged into despair. Over the course of a week, the family received a total of 6 ransom letters and 15 phone calls. They also agreed to comply with all the kidnapper's instructions. However, it would not be long before they realized that they had made a terrible mistake. By the evening of October 4th, 1953, Robert had gathered the staggering sum of $600,000 in ransom money for the safe return of his son. The money was then placed in a duffel bag and taken to a bridge near Highway 40, just east of Kansas City. It was the largest ransom ever paid in American history at that time. Early the next morning, the kidnappers made contact with the Greenleases to confirm that they had retrieved the money and that Bobby would be returned within 24 hours. But as the day went on, there was still no word about the boy's whereabouts. The family waited anxiously for any news, but none came. The Greenleases were left to wonder if their son was alive or if they had been betrayed by the kidnappers. The suspense was unbearable, and it seemed like their worst fears were about to be realized. The next 24 hours would prove to be the most difficult and heartbreaking time in their lives. As the search for Bobby continued, an ex-con and cab driver named Joe Carr was about to play a crucial role in the investigation. He had been hired in the state of St. Louis by a man named Carl Austin Hall to be his personal chauffeur. From what Carr knew, Hall was new in town and was throwing money around like it was going out of style. Hall had rented an apartment, bought new clothes, and was living like a king. Carr was suspicious of Hall's behavior and decided to contact Joe Costello, his boss at the cab company. Costello was a man who had ties with the mob, and in addition to this, he also had connections within the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. The sun had set on October 6, 1953, when Lieutenant Louis Shoulders and Patrolman Elmer Dolan received a tip from Costello about the man flaunting large amounts of money in St. Louis. They immediately rushed to the apartment where Hall was staying and apprehended him. Inside the room, the officers found two hefty metal suitcases filled to the brim with cash. It was an unbelievable sight. Hall was then escorted to the Newstead police station in North St. Louis, where the authorities interrogated him about the source of the money. At first, Hall was insistent they had done nothing wrong, but investigators soon began to put the pieces of the puzzle together. They suspected Hall was involved in the Greenlease kidnapping, given the amount of money he had on him. After some interrogation, Hall finally cracked and confessed to his role in the crime. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. When asked about the whereabouts of Bobby, he revealed the boy was dead. Hall revealed they had not acted alone. He had a partner in crime, a woman named Bonnie Hetty. Together they had hatched the plan to kidnap Bobby and extort his wealthy parents for a hefty ransom. With Hall's confession and a thorough background check, investigators were able to piece together the timeline of events and uncover the shocking details of how the kidnapping occurred. It was a web of deceit and betrayal, with greed at the center of it all. Authorities found out that Hall came from a well-to-do family. He was the son of a lawyer. When his parents passed away, he inherited their 1,100-acre property in Pleasanton, Kansas, along with a substantial inheritance. However, Hall took a turn for the worse as he went on a downward spiral, wasting his fortune, getting divorced, and falling into addiction. His life hit rock bottom when he was sent to the Missouri State Penitentiary for robbing a cab driver of a mere $38. While in prison, Hall dreamed of one big score that would set him up for life, and that's when he remembered the wealthy Greenlease family. You see, years prior, Hall had attended a military reform academy with Bobby's older, adopted half-brother Paul, and that was when he had gotten to know about the family's wealth. In no time, Hall hatched a plan for a ransom payout. All that was left was to figure out just how to abduct the child. That's where Bonnie came into the picture. Bonnie was a woman of many contradictions. Despite being the beneficiary of a sizable inheritance from her father, she still indulged in prostitution and wild parties. She also seemed to have a thing for criminals. Her first husband was a bank robber who met his end in a hail of bullets from the police. But her second marriage didn't fare any better, and she ended up inheriting a house from the divorce settlement. It was in the bar of Hotel Robidoux, Missouri, that Bonnie crossed paths with Hall. Perhaps it was fate, or maybe just the universe aligning, but their chance meeting marked the beginning of a dark and twisted partnership. As the months passed, Hall gradually revealed his twisted scheme to Bonnie, and to his relief, she was all too eager to participate. And so, in the summer of 1953, Hall and Bonnie began trailing the Greenlease family like two hungry wolves stalking their prey. They watched as the family went about their daily routines, hoping to find a weak spot to exploit. At first, they planned to snatch the Greenlease's daughter, Sue, but they soon realized that Bobby, the 6-year-old son, would be an easier target. They knew that they had to act fast if they wanted to make the big score. And with this, the stage was set for the kidnapping that shook the nation to its core. Bonnie had been the one that pretended to be Bobby's aunt and picked him up from school without raising any alarms. Following this, Bonnie and Bobby were then dropped off at a drugstore where Hall was waiting. Hall took control of the situation, driving them across state lines to a vacant field in Overland Park, Kansas. Bonnie got out of the car and walked a short distance, leaving Bobby alone with Hall, who had no intention of keeping him alive. At first, Hall tried to take Bobby's life by using a piece of rope, but the rope was too short. Frustrated and angry, Hall punched Bobby in the face, knocking out one of his teeth. Bobby fell to the car's floor, and that's when Hall pulled out his .38 caliber pistol and shot him at point-blank range. Bobby did not survive for more than 30 minutes after he was abducted. After carrying out the evil deed, both Hall and Bonnie knew they had to get rid of the evidence. They drove to Bonnie's home in St. Joseph, Missouri, with Bobby's lifeless body wrapped in a plastic bag. They then carefully placed the bag in a pre-dug grave in the backyard. To conceal the stench of the dead body, they dumped a large amount of lime onto the bag. Hall then planted chrysanthemums over the grave, hoping to disguise it as a flower garden. Now, when Hall and Bonnie got their hands on the ransom money, they wasted no time in escaping across the state to St. Louis. There, Hall had purchased a pair of metal suitcases to stash the money. He and Bonnie also found an apartment on Arsenal Street with a view of Tower Grove Park, and there they celebrated their newfound fortune by drinking their hearts out. As the night wore on, Bonnie's drunkenness began to get the better of her, and she dozed off. This was the perfect opportunity for Hall to put another plan he had into action. In the middle of the night, he put $2,000 in Bonnie's purse and slipped out of the apartment with the rest of the loot. Hall then took a cab to the Coral Court Motel in Marlboro, Missouri, and along the way, he picked up a prostitute named Sandra O'Day. He planned to use Sandra's help to divert the police's attention. Before his arrest, Hall arranged for her to fly to Los Angeles and mail a letter he had written to the Greenlease family. Doing this would have thrown the police off his trail. There are rumors that Sandra had also at some point caught sight of the ransom money Hall had been carrying about, and she had been the one that reported it to the police. It is, however, not clear if there is any truth in this. Hall is also to believe to have bought 2 garbage cans and a shovel. He then drove a rental car to a spot along the Merrimack River in St. Louis County to hide the ransom money. But unfortunately for Hall, he didn't find a suitable spot to bury the cans, and so he kept the money with him. It wasn't long after this that he was arrested. After all these revelations got out in the open, police sprang into action. Bonnie was tracked down and arrested in the apartment Hall had left her in. Both of them were indicted for capital murder and kidnapping, facing the full force of the law for their crime. On October 7, 1953, Bobby's remains were discovered where they had been buried. 2 days later, on October 9th, a solemn funeral was held at St. Agnes Catholic Church, where loved ones and community members gathered to mourn the tragic loss of this innocent boy. Bobby was laid to rest with tears and heavy hearts, forever remembered as a victim of one of the most heinous crimes in American history. As for the 2 kidnappers, justice was swift for them. Because the crime had crossed state lines, the case became a federal one. And on October 30th, 1953, Hall and Bonnie appeared in a court and pleaded guilty to the charges against them. The jury took just an hour and 8 minutes to deliberate before recommending a death sentence less than a month later on November 19, 1953. Both Hall and Bonney accepted their fates and made no attempt to appeal the verdict. They were executed together in the Missouri gas chamber on December 18, 1953, a mere 81 days after the kidnapping. At the time of their death, Bonney was 41, while Hall was 34 years old. The aftermath of Bobby's kidnapping and murder was not without its twists and turns. Hall and Bonney's execution may have brought closure to the Greenlease family, but it also brought to light a startling revelation. Now, when Hall was arrested, only half the ransom money was recovered. A total of $312,000 was unaccounted for. It was believed that Lieutenant Shoulders and Patrolman Dolan, the officers who arrested Hall, had stolen the missing money. However, they initially denied this, claiming that they had brought all the money with them to the police station. Eventually, they were federally indicted and convicted of perjury. On April 15, 1954, Shoulders was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Dolan, on the other hand, received a 2-year prison sentence. But the story didn't end there. In a shocking turn of events, Shoulders died in 1962. Once this happened, Dolan revealed to the FBI that Shoulders and Joe Costello, the mob boss, had actually stolen half of the ransom money. Dolan had been too scared to speak up earlier for fear of retribution, and it wasn't until Shoulders and Costello had passed away that he finally revealed the truth. For his cooperation, Dolan received a pardon from President Lyndon B. Johnson in July 1965. With this, Bobby's tragic tale came to an end. As we reflect on the tragic events that occurred in 1953, we are reminded that justice was ultimately served for Bobby, but at a great cost. We must continue to ask ourselves, how can we prevent such tragedies from happening again? So what lessons can we learn from Bobby's case? And how can we use this knowledge to build a safer and more just society for all? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.